Okay, in this video, we're going to be talking about your contactor and what happens to your AC system when your contactors go bad. Okay, a contactor is more it's more of a fancy word for just your main switch. Okay, it's pretty much a switch, but they call it a contactor. And what happens is every time your thermostat calls for cooling, okay, your thermostat is going to send a low voltage signal to your contactor outside or that main switch. Okay, if you look at the top right hand corner where I have that picture next to a capacitor, you have a brown wire and a purple wire. Okay, if you notice, there's actually a little red wire on the more away from the contract from the contactor. You have two low voltage wires. They're actually red and white, and they actually power up that contactor. Okay, so when your house calls for cooling, okay, it's going to turn that contactor on. And keep in mind, before you actually start going out to your unit and troubleshooting this problem, if you have zero experience at all with electricity and you're not handy at all electricity, I really recommend turning power off to the unit. There is a toggle switch that goes up and down. There's a plastic part right here in the middle where I'm using my mouse. You can push that down. I recommend when you do this, use a screwdriver. Don't use your finger. If you have zero experience, don't go up there if you want with the insulated screwdriver. If you don't have any experience with electricity, I really recommend you troubleshooting this without voltage. If you do have experience, then there's two ways you can actually check this. You can check this actually with no voltage or with voltage. If you're actually very if you have no experience with electricity, I recommend you go to your breaker box and turn off the power to this, okay, before experimenting or trying to troubleshoot your contactor. There is high voltage there. You can hurt yourself and kill yourself. So if you don't know how to mess with voltage, call a professional or use well insulated instruments to check this contactor. Okay, this can hurt you. Okay, the only thing that you can do to troubleshoot this thing, if you want to test it out, see there's like a little button there up on top here where I'm using my mouse. Okay, if you notice here in the middle, okay, these contactors go through a lot of wear and tear. Okay, if you notice up here where I'm actually moving my mouse in the middle screen, every time this contactor goes up and down, it does arc and it gets carbonated. Okay, there's two ways that this contactor can go bad. Okay, it's either going to get stuck and it's the contacts are going to be so bad that it's not going to send any voltage to the other side of your contactor. When that happens, when the contacts go bad, if you look at top here where I'm using my mouse here, what happens is sometimes these contacts can go so bad that it just won't send any voltage to the other side. So it'll get stuck and it'll look like it's pressed down, but you're not going to get any voltage going to your AC, to your actual outdoor AC unit. Okay, you can use a multimeter. Another way you can check if there's a loss of voltage to the other side, what you do is you get a meter, and what you do is you check if there's voltage on one side, and if there's no voltage on the other side, then you know your contactor is no good. Okay, that's one way to troubleshoot it. Okay, now actually the other way you can troubleshoot this, okay, the other symptom actually is sometimes it's stuck, but then you got voltage going across, right? And then the voltage keeps on running continuously. Now, what happens is if when your thermostat, when you go to your thermostat, another way you can check this, go to your thermostat, put your actual thermostat on off. And if your outdoor unit is still running, okay, that means that your contactor outside is stuck on the closed position, which means it's on. And what happens is the contacts on that contactor, they're stuck, right? So what does that mean? It means that your actual AC unit is going to be running outside. And I showed you there's some pictures here. What will happen is if your air conditioning contactor gets stuck in the closed position where it keeps on running when you have the unit off, your unit will freeze up. I showed there's two pictures here how it looks with the frozen unit. Okay. A lot of people think that when a unit freezes up, it's going to be just for Freon or an actual frozen coil. Um, Also, too, a dirty filter. Okay. Another reason why a unit can actually freeze up is for a stuck contactor. Why? Because what happens is when your contactor is on the stuck position and your AC is off, okay, your blower motor in your attic or in your garage, wherever you have your air handling unit or furnace, it's going to turn off. And what happens is if you don't have any air blowing across your coil, you don't have any of that warm air, the coil will get too cold and freeze up. So whenever you have your outdoor unit running, you need to make sure that you have ventilation or air blowing over your evaporator coil. The two main locations for your coil is usually going to be up in your attic where your furnace is at, or usually uh, in a garage, in a closet. Okay, that's where a lot of other air handlers or furnaces are at. Usually, Florida, most of the time, a lot of units are going to be in your closet, right, or in a garage. And over in Texas, most of them are going to be in your attic, right? So it does vary from state to state where your air handlers are going to be at, right? Okay, so pretty much here, if you notice here, when you see that frozen coil, okay, that just means that your contactor here, if you look at it, the contacts can get stuck. Okay. Now, believe it or not, it's not really a it's this problem does happen, but not that often. Okay. It does happen sometimes. It's not your main reason why a unit will freeze up. Okay, but it does happen from time to time. I haven't had too many. I think I only had maybe one stuck contactor this year in summertime, maybe one, and the majority were actually capacitors. Okay, but it's still good to know this. Okay, and another way you can troubleshoot this is you can actually get a multimeter and you can check continuity across from the actual contactor. Okay, so what you do is you just check if there's continuity from one side to the other side of your contactor, and that's how you can also check if your contactor is actually stuck um, with the multimeter. Now, like I said, keep in mind sometimes your contactor will look stuck or be stuck, but no voltage is going to get across. I mean, it looks like you should get voltage across, but if you do get your continuity test with your meter, you're going to notice that you're not going to get voltage across to the other side of your contactor. Okay, so you could actually replace this part every 5 years. It's not an expensive part. You can go to the supply house or Amazon and buy this part maybe for $10 or $15. I would replace this part every 5 years as a general maintenance on my air conditioning unit. Contactors actually last a little bit longer than actual capacitors. Okay, the main difference between the capacitors, why these capacitors go out so often too, is remember capacitors actually have like an oil inside of that capacitor. So you got oil in that capacitor that will cause an expansion with the heat in these capacitors. Uh, Contactors don't have oil in them. They're just plastic metal parts that don't have really an expansion. They do have normal wear and tear though when they go up and down. So that's probably the only wear and tear that you're going to have. But I would worry more about your capacitor and replace your capacitor maybe every 3 years, especially if you live in a really hot climate that gets close to 100 degrees. Okay. Well, anyways, thanks for watching, and you all have a good day. Okay.